just want to say good morning. Thank you all for coming. I want to call the May 7th, 2026 Bureau of Household Goods and Services Advisory Council meeting to order. My name is Claire Goldstein. I am the Deputy Chief at the Bureau. This morning our meeting is hybrid, so we have council members, staff in person here at DCA headquarters, and we also have people joining via WebEx. I'll just do a quick roll call for council members who are with us. Tom Keepers.
Here.
I saw a wave, I'll take it. Sarah Oakley. Here. Okay, Dan Rhodes, it's hard for me to see. He's not on the call. Okay. Toby Taylor. I know I saw Toby.
He's got a box up there.
Yeah. Okay. Toby, can you hear us? Steve, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, that
Toby may
counts.
be muted.
Yeah. Okay. And Pascal Benyamini had a work conflict. Toby, can you hear us? Sarah, were you able to do a mic check with Toby earlier?
This is some moderator. Unfortunately, I was unable to get a mic check from Toby earlier. Toby, let me put up some instructions on the screen if you're having audio problems. You may want to check that WebEx is selecting the proper microphone. Additionally, if you can't get your microphone to work, you could also try routing your audio through your phone. And I put instructions up on the screen for that.
Can you email Toby and see if he's having issues, please? Okay. Can you hear us at all, Toby?
Blink.
Are you able to put your video on? So
I can hear you now. I'm on my phone, so I'm good to go.
okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. All right. I also just want to note that both Kelly Williams, who is the Bureau's administration manager, and Alda Aguirre, who is the enforcement chief, are unable to join us today. So in their place, Chris Janis is going to provide the update for the administration unit. And to replace Alda, we've got, count them, 3 people. We've got Raleigh Jacoby, Oliver Manila, and Elizabeth Peden, who will provide the enforcement update jointly. I also want to thank, we have some DCA staff here today. We have Lucia Saldivar, who is representing DCA Board Bureau Relations. She's in the room with us. We have Jennifer Tompkins and Suzanne Balkas from DCA's budget office. They're on the WebEx. And we have Helen Joffroy, who is the Bureau's legal counsel, in the room with us. And lastly, Sarah Arani, who is doing double duty today, serving as both the moderator and also will be doing the presentation on the strategic plan update. I do also just want to take a moment to thank Chris Janis from the Bureau for all of his logistical and technical help in pulling this together. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, and Chris has a long to-do list and is always very gracious about plowing his way through it. Just briefly want to mention how the public comment and comments from the council members will flow. First, we'll ask council members in the room if they have any comments, then we'll go to council members online. And then we'll do the same thing for any members of the public in the room or any members of the public online. I do want to note there are a couple of exits out the room. For those of you who are here in person, one there and then there's one behind us. Restrooms are located past the front counter, kind of under the stairs, if anybody needs that. And then just a couple items before we move on with the agenda. I do want to publicly acknowledge the contributions of our longtime council member, Bert Grimes, who resigned from the council in December of last year. Bert was a strong advocate for the Hufty industry, as a council member, represented that industry well. But he also was just a very kind presence and a very positive energy in his time on the council. So all the staff at the Bureau just want to wish Bert well as he cruises his way around the world. And then I just want to let folks know that we are working to identify a replacement on the council to ensure there is representation for HUFD. And that's sort of all the industries that are under the HUFD umbrella. Ultimately, council members are appointed by the DCA director, and we'll definitely keep council members updated on any developments or any future announcements about new council members. And I think that. And then lastly, I do want to update the council on some of the big priorities for the Bureau for 2026. We have a lot of big projects on our plate, and those will be talked about in more detail as you hear about the work in the different units. And I just thought I'd give a very brief, very high-level overview of what those are, and also acknowledge that we are asking a lot of the staff at the Bureau as we take on all these additional projects on top of their ongoing work, and so really want to note their contributions in making it possible to move forward with these. So again, you will be hearing about these in more detail through the meeting, but this is the year in which we write our sunset report. It is due to the legislature at the end of the year. Connected to that is the fee study, which you'll also be hearing more about during the meeting. We are also updating our strategic plan, which expires at the end of 2026. You'll hear from Sarah on that. We are pursuing regulations for HUFD and licensing for household movers. We are undergoing a major revamp of our website, which Joanne will talk about during her update. We continue to work on Connect and updating that database for both licensing and enforcement. We have also undertaken a delinquency project to work on licensees who have fallen behind on renewing their license, to do additional outreach to those licensees and try to collect that revenue. And lastly, we are undergoing improvements in the building itself, the physical building, and we are working on replacing some of the equipment in the lab, in the burn room where the full-scale flammability tests are conducted on mattresses. So we are already in May, so we have 7 months to get all that done. So it is busy at the Bureau. There's a lot going on, and I look forward to having you hear from everybody about the work that's going on in each of those specific projects. Just briefly, this is item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. This item is for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. I do want to ask if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charge pending before the Bureau to please not discuss the details of your case or the pending complaint. If your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you can make those comments now, but you may also want to wait until that item comes up for discussion. Please note that we will ask for public comment before wrapping up each item on the agenda today, and public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. So are there any comments from council members in the room?
Yes. World events have caused an unexpected and rapid and dramatic increase in the cost of oil, impacting gas, diesel, and plastic products dramatically. And one of the shortcomings of the Max 4 tariff, unlike most tariffs in transportation, not just moving, but in freight, is that our tariff does not include a line item for a fuel surcharge. Now, don't get me wrong, because if a mover charges a fuel charge and in conjunction with their transportation rates, it does not exceed maximum rates, and that information is disclosed in the proper time frame, that's allowable. and that works generally for COD. Without having a line item in the tariff, every single national account corporate type job that has a fuel charge will be rejected because the auditors that look at pricing review the tariff and see no line item for such. I know this is not something that we can address today, and I don't think that it might even be reasonable to address what that charge should be. But it seems reasonable to incorporate into the Max 4 tariff a line that says a fuel charge could be allowable if meeting certain parameters. And I think that helps a lot of businesses, particularly now, in California, the highest fuel rates in the country. And for diesel, we run into situations of $8 a gallon. That's not a cost that can be recouped based on current Max 4 rates. So we need some relief from that. And I would also explain to you that there's a lot of plastic products that movers use in the course of their business that the dramatic price changes in tape, stretch wrap, bubble wrap, etc., are not reflected in the annual increases that we're seeing. They've gone up 25% or more in the last quarter. And while everyone is hopeful that we will see an end to problems that is causing fuel to increase, there's absolutely no guarantees. I know we can't address that today, but I would hope that would be something that we could talk about in the very near future.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I definitely made a note of that. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments from council members in the room? No. Council members online, any comments?
No, ma'am.
No, okay. And we don't have any public comments. Sarah, are there any comments from members of the public online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, you can click that raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests.
I think we can.
It appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3. This is the update from Board and Bureau Relations, and I'm going to hand it over to Lucia Saldivar.
Thank you so much. Good morning, advisory committee members and staff. My name is Lucia Saldivar, and I'm the Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide a brief update from the department. Firstly, I wanted to wish everyone a very happy Public Service Recognition Week. DCA would like to recognize and show its appreciation to the dedicated staff across all boards and bureaus. We are grateful to all of our employees who go above and beyond daily to carry out the consumer protection mission. And on behalf of the Department of Consumer Affairs, thank you for your service to California. We're also excited to share that this spring DCA relaunched the Enforcement Academy Training Program, which had not been held since the COVID-19 pandemic. This 4-day training program offered DCA Board and Bureau enforcement staff an overview of the enforcement process, investigations, complaint intake, and formal discipline, as well as the opportunity to learn best practices and make connections across other programs. Our March session included staff participation from over 20 different boards and bureaus, and we are planning additional academies in August and October of 2026. I would also like to give a shout out to this bureau's incredible staff who participated as panelists and presenters. This effort would not have been possible without you. Next, DCA's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Executive Steering Committee recently selected 15 employees throughout DCA to participate as members of the inaugural DEI subcommittee. This subcommittee will meet bi-monthly to develop and implement multiple initiatives and goals to promote positive organizational impact. And the first meeting of the subcommittee is scheduled for July 31st of this year, and we'll continue to highlight some of the milestones and accomplishments of this subcommittee in the future. We also wanted to remind council members about the upcoming reorganization of DCA's oversight agency. On July 1st, the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency will be split into two new separate entities, the California Housing and Homelessness Agency and the Business and Consumer Services Agency. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs, which will be among one of the 8 departments under this new agency. DCA continues to participate in multiple work groups on the logistics for this transition and will continue to keep Bureau leadership apprised in the months ahead. To close, thank you so much for your service to the Bureau and to the people of California. I'm available if anyone has any questions.
Great, thank you. Any comments from council members in the room? Nope. Any comments from council members online?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Sarah, do you mind checking if there are any, do we have any, well, I'll go through the process. Any comments from members of the public online?
Sure. This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. So we will move on to agenda item number 4, which is the strategic plan update. And that starts on page 2 of your packet. As I mentioned earlier, the current 4-year plan expires at the end of 2026. And we've already started working on revamping that in collaboration with DCA Solid. And so as part of that plan, and Sarah's going to review it, we will be sending a survey out to council members to solicit their feedback, as well as to Bureau staff, licensees, and other interested parties. And that will help to inform changes to the plan. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Sarah in this moment, representing DCA Solid on the strategic plan update.
Hello, I'm doing double, like was mentioned earlier, I'm doing double duty today. I'm the moderator for the meeting, and I'll be helping the Bureau with their new strategic plan. And so some of you may have done strategic planning in the past. So this will be a refresher, but for those who haven't, this will be, kind of some new information. And I apologize, WebEx is stuck on my small screen right now. So if I look like I'm like staring intently, that's why, because my slides are very small. But we'll talk about the what, why, and how of strategic planning. So what exactly is strategic planning? Strategic planning is the process for organizations to define their direction and decide on how they want to utilize their resources to achieve certain missions and goals. Your strategic plan, we'll talk about, what an organization does, what the organization actually is, and why it does what it needs. Why do we conduct strategic planning? Strategic planning is really critical to efficient and effective operations. You can kind of think of it as like a roadmap that helps you, determine, what are the things that you want to get done and how to get it done. The other reason is it's legislatively mandated, so another reason for us to do strategic planning. And strategic planning also helps you achieve short-term and long-term goals. Your strategic plan is typically anywhere between 3 to 5 years, and in that strategic plan, you'll determine, okay, these are some things that we want to focus on, and it'll detail out, this is how we're going to achieve all those things we want to focus on. We have a 5-stage phase for strategic planning. What we do first is we'll survey stakeholders. Like was mentioned earlier, we'll send out a survey to external stakeholders. We'll also get information from staff and the council members. And from all that feedback, I will write up a report, which is called an environmental scan, based on all those survey results. And you'll receive that environmental scan prior to the strategic planning session, where you'll use that information that all your stakeholders said was good or what was bad about, the Bureau, and use that to provide yourself direction for your next strategic plan. And so we'll use that information to determine, okay, these are the areas that we need to focus on because they were identified as weaknesses or things that need to be improved. And here you can see this is a roadmap of what a strategic planning process looks like. And as you can see, it's very lengthy. Strategic planning does take quite a bit of time. A lot of that is the environmental analysis portion, which is the second stage. And this is because we usually get a lot of comments from people. And so a lot of reading that information and analyzing it and summarizing what people are saying. But right now we're in that first step, the preliminary meeting and like setup, where we're just kind of, laying down the groundwork, what we're going to be doing for strategic planning, and kind of setting things up. You'll see also that after the environmental scan is done, kind of like I mentioned before, we'll do that strategic planning session where we'll determine, what objectives we want. We finalize the plan, and then lastly, the last step of strategic planning, which is my favorite part, is the action planning step, where we take all those objectives and we determine, okay, what are all the individual steps that we need to do in order to make this something that we can accomplish. So as you can see, strategic planning, very involved. Another portion of strategic planning that we started implementing is diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility. And part of this is the governor has issued an executive order N1622 to require state agencies to consider diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility into the strategic planning process. And a couple things that we've done to kind of modify our process in order to accomplish this is we started adding some DIA and demographic questions in their survey. They're all optional. They're not required, but they are there for people to answer. In our environmental scan, we also have a DIA analysis in the report. While we do the strategic planning process, we encourage committee members or board members for the boards that we work with to consider DIA into their goals and objectives. And usually that can be represented by, kind of being aware of if you're going to add a new policy or decision, just kind of, be aware that it might affect other people, such as one example that we usually toss out is that if, this would be for other clients, but if someone were to offer or require a new continuing education requirement, is that burdensome to some licensees? Or if an exam is required, is it only available in person? Can people, all throughout the state access it? So just those are the kind of things that we talk about when we, are considering DIA into strategic planning. And that's hitting my last point. That's also some things that we, try to remind people participating in strategic planning to kind of, keep in mind and think of. All right. So talk about what the strategic planning components are. I kind of mentioned earlier, you can kind of think of your strategic plan as a roadmap. And a lot of things when you're looking at a map that you think about is, where am I now? How am I going to get where I need to go? And where exactly am I going and how will I get there? And strategic planning answers all those. Your strategic plan, where we are now, is answered by your mission and values and the environmental scan. It's kind of, determines where you are currently as an organization. So where we are going is your vision statement and your goals and objectives. It's your, telling yourself, this is where I want to go and this is where I want to be at the end of the strategic plan. And the how we get there is your action plan, determining each individual step you need to get from point A to point B. So this here is your current mission statement. The Bureau of Household Goods and Services mission is to protect and serve consumers while ensuring fair and competitive market. And during the strategic planning process, we'll take a look at this mission statement and determine if it is, still accurate, or if we might want to tweak it a little bit or make changes to it. But this is what it currently is, and this is how you define yourself as an organization. Here are your values. Once again, your values are something that you you as an organization say, these are things that are important to us, and kind of things that we try to model our organization on. So once again, these are things that we can look at during the strategic planning process. If some of them may not, necessarily need to still be there, or okay, we do want to keep this one, or we want to add additional ones based on whatever the current environment is. And then your environmental scan, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, this tells you how your stakeholders view you currently as an organization. And typically, in that environmental scan, we'll get feedback from what we call internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Your internal stakeholders are going to be, your committee members, they're going to be management, they're going to be staff, everyone who's kind of internal to the Bureau. Whereas your external stakeholders, these can be consumers or licensees, associations, anyone who has any sort of, who can either be affected by the board or the Bureau, or could affect the Bureau. Anyone who's kind of, outside the organization. Where are we going is defined by your vision statement. So a vision statement I like to always describe as this is a perfect utopia where you don't need to exist anymore as a Bureau. You achieved everything. And so your current vision statement is that consumers are effectively protected and the marketplace is fair. So this is a really good vision statement, and kind of, provides direction for the Bureau to, aspire to be eventually. You also have your goal areas, which, kind of provide direction and purpose for the Bureau. 5 is a good number. And so once again, something also that if you do feel like if you want to change them, we can, but if not, these are perfectly fine. And then your objectives also kind of define where you're going. And oftentimes in the strategic planning process, when I work with other clients, people will conflate goals and objectives together. They'll say, okay, this is our, goal for licensing, when they mean objective. And when it comes to strategic planning, they are 2 different things. Your goals are kind of your day-to-day items that you do, licensing, enforcement, consumer protection, stuff like that, where your objectives are more short-term, individual things that go under each of your goal areas. So they are specific to your strategic plan. They're only about the length of your strategic plan, so anywhere to 3 to 5 years. And they're a little bit more specific than, just licensing. I mentioned that strategic planning can kind of be seen as a roadmap, but we have another analogy as well. You can also kind of see your strategic plan as like a house, where your mission, values, and vision are the foundation of your house. And hopefully you don't change the foundation of your house every 3 to 5 years. It just provides stability for your organization. Your goal areas are the walls, for your house, where you're not going to change it out very often, but it does provide structure for your organization. And your objectives are more like, furnishing, curtains, things that you would change out 3 to 5 years, typically the length of your strategic plan. And then the last stage for strategic planning that I kind of mentioned earlier is the action planning. This is where we work with just staff to determine, what are the resources that we need or currently have to complete all these objectives. We'll identify tasks, assign responsible parties, and establish timeframes. And at the end of the action planning phase, the leadership will get a nice little tracker to kind of keep track of every step of the strategic plan and kind of keep that available for to either present at Bureau meetings if they wish, and just kind of determine how well are we doing on our strategic plan. In the action planning phase, we try to measure progress. by providing performance measures and also providing those monitoring and tracking tools, which leadership can then use to, do regular check-ins, be like, hey, how far are we on this one objective that we need to get done at the end of the year? And so those are some good resources for strategic planning. All right, and that's it for my presentation. Are there any questions on strategic planning at all?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Sure.
On the surveying of stakeholders,
Mhm.
I would request that the advisory council get advance copy of whatever that looks like for twofold reasons. First of all, to review if there's any items that we feel are issues. And second of all, since a number of us represent and support our industry, we get a lot of questions from members that receive documents from entities that like, should I pay attention to this? Should I deal with it? So I think that you'll get much better participation if we have an opportunity to review that first.
Okay, perfect. And I did send the copy of the survey over to Claire, and she has reviewed it, but I can make sure the council members also get that prior to it being published on the website.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments from council members in the room? No. Council members online, any comments or questions for Sarah?
No, ma'am.
Nope. Okay. Any comments or questions from members of the public in the room? Nope. And any comments from members of the public online? Sarah, now you put on your other hat.
All right. This is the moderator for any members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to provide a public comment on this item, please click that raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can press *3 on your device to raise your hand. All right, and it looks like there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Presentation, Sarah. Okay, so we are moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the fiscal update, and that is going to be presented by Jennifer Tompkins and Suzanne Balkus from the UCA Budget Office, and they are joining us online via the WebEx.
Great, thank you. Well, good morning. My name is Jennifer Tompkins, and I'm the budget analyst with UCA. And I'm here with Suzanne Balkus, the budget manager. I want to thank the Bureau and the Advisory Council members for allowing me time to present today. I'm here to present the 2025-26 fiscal month 8 fund condition. Please refer to agenda item 5, page 14 of your meeting materials. The attached fund condition statement is based on the 2026-27 governor's budget and includes 2024-25 prior year revenues and expenditures actuals. And just a reminder, we read this document from top to bottom, then left to right. And the left column is prior year, and that would begin with 0 since the transfer to the new fund occurred in 2024-25. And for 24-25 prior year, based on fiscal month 13, the Bureau collected about $11.4 million in revenue. There was a revenue transfer to Motor Carrier Safety Improvement Fund of $16,000. There was a transfer from 0325 fund to 3438 for about $2.22 million. Another transfer from 0752 to 3438 for about $5.46 million. And another transfer from 3315 to 3438 for about $7.27 million. And the Bureau's expenditures for 24-25 based on fiscal month 13 are $12.86 million. And that gives a fund balance of $13.44 million, which is about 11.9 months in reserve. For the current year, it's based on the fiscal month 8 projections, and the Bureau is projected to collect approximately $12.46 million in revenue. And there is the revenue transfer to Motor Carrier Safety Improvement Fund of $21,000. And the Bureau's 2025-26 projected expenditures are about $13.56 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the Bureau with a fund balance of $12.3 million or 10.4 months in reserve. And the Bureau is estimating additional transfers in 2025-26 from the three funds' remaining balance. And to note, these amounts could change since the funds are open for any prior year unpaid or late invoices. And based on SB 814, all remaining balance transfers should occur prior to July 1st, 2026. And just a few things to note about the fund condition. It's a snapshot in time and a reflection of the data used in its creation. And one of the main driving factors for expenditure increases in future years is a result of personal service adjustments. These include general salary increases as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The Budget Office includes an ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. The fund condition does not include increased enforcement expenditures, which could create additional cost pressure on the Bureau's fund in outer years. The Budget Office will continue to work with the Bureau on any future resource needs. Months in reserve will go down in out years as we project revenues to remain constant and expenditures to increase by the 3% mentioned previously. And lastly, we would like to note that the Bureau that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the Bureau's need for additional resources, which could increase pressure on the fund. And the Budget Office will continue to monitor the Bureau's fund condition statement and keep the line of communication with the chief open for any future needs or expectations.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Before I open it up to public comment, I just want to add on briefly. Also, if you look at page 15 of your packet, Jennifer mentioned there's the remaining transfer for the fund consolidation. So right now, that's about 5.7 million, and as she said, that's expected July 1, by July 1, the end of the fiscal year. And then as a reminder, Jennifer mentioned this as well, that number could go down if there are accounts payable that need to be drawn out of that. The other thing I do want to highlight in Jennifer's comments, because it feeds into the next topic, but as you can see on page 14, the projections are that the Bureau is facing a structural deficit and that the gap between revenue and expenditures is anticipated to continue to widen. And so we do, historically, the Bureau has reverted about $3 million a year. But because of the increase in expenses that Jennifer mentioned, that's not probably going to be likely. We're sort of anticipating more 1.5 million going forward. And so I just want to highlight, Jennifer touched on those in her comments, but I wanted to particularly highlight that for council members. And then lastly, I just want to note at the bottom of page 15 is the revenue by program that council members had asked to be included in the packet materials. So I thought what we would do now is before we talk about the fee study, we would just take a moment and just ask if there are any comments from council members in the room of anything that's been presented so far on the fiscal update.
Yeah, I have a question. So on the initial transfer for the Household Movers Fund, it was significantly higher than the other groups. And then remaining balance, we kind of fell in the middle. Why is there that discrepancy? Why did we provide so much more in the initial, but then on the secondary transfer, we're kind of middle of the pack?
So one of the, this is Suzanne, one of the factors is, first, for all of the funds, we try to take about 70%, but there is some unanticipated cost that comes and hits. So what could have happened is something was charged, from a previous POs. And that's why we say we keep that account open, because it could be that there is a PO that did not go through except after the fact, and that is why the remaining is actually less. So it's not like we took more from one account to another. It's just it is depend where a charge hit and when it hits.
So,
I'm not sure that
Right.
satisfies my curiosity.
so I think that, and this is something that Jennifer and Suzanne can fill in, but the total amounts didn't change. It just has to do with the bills that are paid out of it and what's remaining gets transferred. So it's, I guess maybe could you explain your concern?
So we had a bigger amount charged after the initial distribution than the other two groups.
A bigger amount that was transferred.
No. We had a bigger amount transferred initially.
Mhm.
In the secondary transfer, it wasn't, if it was 30% was left retained, then our number should have been higher on the secondary distribution as well. The reason it wasn't, is what I'm hearing, the reason it wasn't is because there was costs associated with our program that weren't associated with the other two programs.
Right.
Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yes. As I understand what's.
Correct.
Yes.
So sometimes work is being done, but it's not being charged except after a later date, and that's why accounting policy, we leave it open so we can charge it into that account. And so that could be one factor associated with it, is that whatever work was done, it was not charged except after the fact, and that is why you're going to see it is less than any the other programs.
Is there some transparency to those numbers that we can see?
So I think what may make the most sense is that I can work with Suzanne and Jennifer and get a more detailed accounting. And then we can share that. Yeah.
So we will Jennifer beforehand, and we will ask for detail on that account, and so we'll be able to provide you that information of what was the charges that hit.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other comments from council members in the room? No. Any comments from members of the public in the room? I think I did that out of order, but that's all right. Council members online, any comments about the fiscal update so far?
No, ma'am.
This is Tom Keepers. This last concept, I appreciate the question. Conceptually, isn't it like we have 3 checking accounts, we're creating one consolidated, and then each of the individual checking account, you got to leave some money in there because costs are coming in after the fact?
Correct.
So, okay, just want to make sure I understand it. I appreciate the question too, to have some transparency into that. Thank you.
And any comments from members of the public so far?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. At this time.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so the other part of the fiscal update is an overview of the fee study. So as we mentioned last couple council meetings, mentioned again today, that part of the sunset process is the inclusion of a fee study to determine if the fees that we're charging across all 3 programs are appropriate to cover costs and in the context of the structural deficit that the Bureau is facing. And so Chaz Rafferty is ably leading the Bureau's efforts on that daunting task. And so she's going to provide an overview of the process for the council members. I'll turn it over to Chaz.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, council members. My name is Chaz Rafferty. I am the licensing and administration chief here in the Bureau. Good morning, everybody. Beginning on page 16 of the meeting material, you'll see that the Bureau has officially launched fee study, also in conjunction and oversight from DCA Budgets, the budgets team. They've been great. And we're launching this fee study in an effort to re-examine our current licensing fees. And as Claire mentioned, the Bureau is facing a structural deficit, and we must ensure that our licensing fees accurately reflect the level of the services that we provide here in the Bureau. So the fee study is going to evaluate every single program that the Bureau regulates. And the fee study was organized into 3 separate phases. The fee study started in January, and we're expecting it to probably end around August as we're getting closer to submitting the sunset report. And as I said, it was launched into 3 separate phases, and the first phase, which is now complete, focused on establishing expectations and guidelines to ensure that we are collecting accurate and reliable data. Also during this phase, each of the Bureau units identified and documented all of their responsibilities, their duties, and their tasks. And once we finalized those task lists, we moved into phase 2, which is where we are at today. And Bureau staff are actively tracking their tasks and recording the time it takes to complete each of these tasks. And this information is the core data that will inform the final analysis of this fee study. So once we collect all of this data, phase 3 will begin. And during this phase, we are going to review, we're going to analyze, we're going to organize all the data, and we will begin drafting the final report. And I will say this work is essential to ensuring our fee structure is fair, transparent, and aligned with the true costs of the services that we provide. That concludes my brief overview on the fee study. Do any of the council members in the room have any comments or questions?
Are you guys using a software program for the time tracking?
No, not unless you want to consider Excel or Microsoft Word tables a software program. No, it's a lot of data, a lot. And I will say the licensing team has submitted a lot of amazing data. There is so much to go through and review and look at. Yeah, they have been working really, really hard. So has everybody else. But licensing has a lot of work, and they're submitting some good stuff. So I look forward to reviewing that and seeing where we land. All right, council members online, any comments or questions?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, this is Tom Keepers. I just wanted to appreciate the effort that the Bureau is going through. Had a nice conversation with Claire on this very topic recently. It's a lot of work, and just looking forward to seeing what the outcomes are, including, any opportunities for process improvement, which I know I brought up last meeting as well. And Claire had the joy of talking about it again this week. So anyway, thanks for understanding that and the effort on that.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, members of the public in the room, any questions? And any members of the public online, comments or questions?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raised hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to agenda item 6, which is the review of the October 16th, 2025 Advisory Council meeting minutes. They'll start on page 19 of the packet. Any comments from council members in the room on the meeting minutes? No, okay. Any comments from council members online on the meeting minutes? Nope. Okay. Any members of the public in the room on the meeting minutes? All right, Sarah, would you mind checking if there are any comments from members of the public for agenda item 6?
Sure. This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So agenda item number 7 is the business modernization update. That's on page 31 of the packet. Chris Sanchez is going to provide that update on all things related to Connect. But before I turn it over to him, I do want to note that on pages 31 and 32, we talk about the target release dates of May and June for the Ear Hefty renewal for non-chains. And I do want to note that we've had to push that date out, unfortunately, to July to allow some time to make some improvements in the process. As much as we didn't want to have to do that, it is going to be better, I think, for licensees as well as for staff. The goal here is to create a process. If it's easier for licensees and they can get through it more quickly, that's only going to make it easier for staff as well. And so, unfortunately, there is that delay. But this is a process that's going to be rolled out to 40,000 licensees, and we really want to try to get it as right as we can. So I just wanted to note that before handing it over to Chris to give the update.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Sanchez, and I will be providing the business modernization update. Continuing on page 31, our top priority has been to launch Ear renewals, which is slated for July 1st. And followed shortly after that will be Hefty renewals. We also anticipate chain renewals to be live in July or August as well. Since our October 2025 meeting, we have launched quarterly report auto notifications. Licensees receive notifications with quarterly report due dates, penalty dates, and impending suspension for non-compliance if they have not submitted revenue for 4 consecutive quarters. We have added resource links for the external user-connected dashboard. These links include HHM quarterly report due dates, maintenance forms, and a direct link to the VHUG's website. Auto notification emails for licensees missing or have inactive workers' compensation, PLPD, and cargo insurance are also live. And what this looks like is an auto email with a reminder that you need to upload these missing documents. For maintenance on current online transactions, a cancel and withdrawal option for transfer, general, interstate, and maintenance applications are now available to staff. Prior to this update, staff were not able to cancel it on their own and would have to wait for the application to abandon. And now we can be a little bit more proactive on our side, keeping our information, I guess, accurate. For online transactions, we are targeting July 1st for license linking, and what this allows our Ear and Hefty licensees to transfer and link their existing license to Connect with a unique PIN code and their license number. This is a part of why the release is pushed back a little bit. Just think it's going to be a little bit easier of a process. And the Ear and Hefty renewals for non-chains is also slated for July of this year. Ear and Hefty licensees will now be able to renew their license via Connect online. And yes, stop there. Our next steps are to continue to use this opportunity to improve processes for applicants, licensees, and staff. And HHM updates are also being addressed through maintenance and operations. Still to build, there are a few items that we need to build out, and this includes Ear and Hefty initial applications, enforcement features, online citation payments, and thermal installation directory. This concludes my updates for the business modernization. Do I have any comments from council members in the room? Any comments from council members online? Any comments from members of the public in the room? And any comments from members of the public online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you.
Chris, before you pass it off, I do just want to mention one thing about the Ear Hefty renewal that we forgot to mention. And that is one of the, in the process, licensees will have an opportunity to update their address. And so that's a hopefully a nice feature for licensees and a really welcome feature for staff. So I just wanted to highlight that. So we forgot to mention it. Okay.
And I am going to pass it over to Chris for the admin update.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, my name is Chris Janis, and I'm an analyst in the admin unit, filling in for Kelly Williams, who could not be here today. Since hiring continues to be one of the top priorities for the Bureau, my presentation will begin with Bureau staffing. Please join me by reviewing agenda item 8, starting on page 34. Aside from the Bureau Chief position, which is appointed by the Governor's Office, the Bureau has only one vacant position to fill at this time. After these meeting materials were published, the Bureau received notice that one of the household movers licensing analysts was leaving state service. The Bureau will begin advertising that licensing analyst position soon. As a fiscal precaution, the Bureau has delayed filling 6 positions, 3 compliance unit analysts and 3 special investigators, pending the release of the Governor's 2026-27 fiscal year budget and the outcome of the Bureau's fee study. Bureau management does not anticipate that leaving these positions vacant will adversely affect Bureau operations in the short term. Since the last advisory council meeting in October 2025, the Bureau has filled 7 positions, 3 compliance analysts, 1 compliance office technician, 2 special investigators, and 1 licensing analyst. I'm also happy to report that the Bureau has 2 filled Spanish bilingual positions, a compliance analyst and a special investigator with the Southern California team. Lastly, there were 3 staff members that have left the Bureau. 2 people retired and 1 left state service. Next, I'd like to touch on lab contracts. Over the past 2 years, the Bureau's contract analyst, Sue Robinson, has executed 36 contracts. These contracts are highly time-consuming and require extensive coordination within the Bureau, with the DCA's Business Services Office, and with external vendors. 11 of these contracts are either in their final stages or were fully completed within this last quarter. The last topic I would like to discuss is staff engagement. Since our last advisory council meeting, the Bureau has held several events for staff, including a full-day new employee orientation and team building event, an all-staff meeting followed by a Halloween-themed potluck in October, and another all-staff meeting followed by a sports-themed potluck in January. Special thanks to the potluck committee for their creativity and hard work to make these events happen. And that concludes the admin update for today. Do we have any questions from advisory council members in the room? Do we have any questions from advisory council members online? Do we have any questions from the public in the room? And last, Sarah, could you open up comments for online public?
Sure. This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And with that, I will pass it on to the licensing manager, Jacqueline Castro, for the next section.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome advisory council members and public in the room and online. VHUDs have included 2 years of data to show statistical trends across all programs. Today I'll be reporting on the licensing statistics, which you can find on page 38, and the licensing processing times, which you can find on page 43 through 44. Please note that the revenue for year and half-day renewal fees have been included per your request from the last advisory meeting. In electronic and appliance repair, we noted a small decrease from September 2025 to March 2026 across appliance and electric service dealers, and an increase in service contract sellers and service contract administrators. The number of combination appliance and electronic service dealers remain the same. In the quarter ending March 2026, the Bureau received $440,133 in ear renewal fees. At the end of March, the Bureau was processing ear applications received 1 week and 3 days ago, renewals received within 2 days, and service contract administrator applications received 2 weeks and 3 days ago. Please note that service contract applications experience longer processing times due to incomplete or missing information concerning language in the service contracts at the time of review that requires back and forth email correspondence between the applicant and the Bureau. In home furnishing and thermal insulation, there was an overall small decrease in each license type due to business closures and delinquencies, and a small increase in sanitizer and thermal insulation manufacturers. In the quarter ending March 2026, the Bureau received $853,220 in hefty renewal fees. At the end of March, the Bureau was processing hefty applications received 1 week and 5 days ago, and renewals received 1 day ago. In January 2026, the licensing unit launched Project Delinquency, an initiative focused on helping ear and hefty delinquent licensees return to active status. As part of this effort, licensee staff are issuing and mailing out 50 to 75 delinquent invoices per week to help bring businesses back into compliance. In addition, this project has assisted us with determining if the businesses are non-operational and has provided us with the opportunity to update contact information to ensure effective communication moving forward that will also assist with the Connect Online transition. As Chris mentioned, we will be launching the Ear Hefty Connect Online renewal in July. Since October of 2025, we have had extensive discussions, meetings, and testing has taken place to ensure a more streamlined renewal experience for the licensees. The rollout will begin with the licensee's expiration date, providing step-by-step instructions on how to register and link their account using their license number and a unique PIN number. The goal is to give licensees ample time to register and encourage them to take advantage of the new simplified online renewal process. Licensing will also provide cross-training to staff and other Bureau units to support this transition. In March, 37 new household mover permits were issued. However, there were no permits issued for interstate movers. There were 37 exams administered with a 97% pass rate. As of March, the Bureau was processing household mover general applications received 1 week and 2 days prior, and transfer applications received 1 day prior. No interstate applications have been received to report on. Maintenance applications, including updated insurance, contact information changes, and DBA additions or removals, were being processed 4 days ago. There was a total of 1,040 quarterly reports received in March for a total of $752,385. The Bureau continues to send notifications via the Connect system and postcard mailouts reminding movers of the upcoming quarterly report due dates. In addition, the quarterly reports due dates are also found on each licensee's dashboard as well as the Bureau website. As a friendly reminder, the 2026 quarter one is due no later than May 18th to avoid penalty fees. The household mover analysts continue to assist permit holders with submitting their quarterly reports to avoid delays and suspension. Licensing staff continue to collaborate with HHM licensees to address insurance lapses and ensure ongoing compliance. Also, licensing staff can now cancel or withdraw applications and maintenance forms directly in Connect when appropriate, either at the request of the applicant licensee or when duplicate submissions occur. In addition, work is underway to update all household mover paper applications so they align with the current requirements of Connect. Before concluding, I would like to introduce our newest household mover licensing analyst, Megan Sekitahama. Can you please stand up, Megan? Megan started with the Bureau in March of this year and is currently training with Lavinia. We're so happy to have her. She's catching on rather quickly, and we're excited that she's part of our team. So welcome again, Megan, to the Bureau. With that, this concludes my licensing overview. Does the council in the room have any questions or comments?
Absolutely. So first of all, Jacqueline, I got to tell you that we hear nothing but positive comments from movers related to licensing help. So you guys are doing a great job, and it's greatly appreciated. So my first question is related to the exam pass rate. And have we just got a much more scholarly group of applicants? Or how did we get to such a lofty number? This is the highest number I've ever seen. And so I'm just curious if that's been contemplated, if people are wondering about that, or if there's anything being done on the testing side. Second of all, as I look at these licensing statistics, weeks in progress, this really doesn't tell much of a story. So the only story I can gather from this really is when there's a zero, I assume that means that there were no applicants in that time frame. If the time frame to process was zero, that meant that there was probably nothing to do. But I don't know if an EAR application that the processing took a week, 1.1 weeks on one month and 1.4 on the other, if there's any connection to the amount of applications, that sort of thing. So I hate to ask for more detail, but that seems like an area where there'd be like 1.1/3 or whatever. So you could see how many applicants, and then we get an idea, okay, this is why the flow has changed. So I think that table as it sits doesn't provide much information. That would be my comments.
We can provide that. I do want to mention that sometimes those weekly timeframes do change depending on staff time. If staff are out on vacation, sometimes that slows down the progression, right? Because there's less staff reviewing. Sometimes it could also be that we receive a bulk amount of applications or renewals on 1 week, and then 2 weeks are kind of silent, right? We don't get a whole lot. So it really depends on the applicants and the licensees and what they're submitting to the Bureau when that comes to us, when it's cashiered in the cashiering unit at BCA and when it arrives on our desk. And then it also encompasses other things like how many phone calls we receive, right, from applicants or licensees that have questions. And that kind of takes a toll too on some of the staff and slows down progression. But I will say that with EAR and HUFTE, we really do pride ourselves in keeping within that 30-day time frame, and that's from the time that we receive the application to the time that we issue a license. So we stay pretty healthy on that. Renewals are usually pretty low on processing times because the minute we receive renewals, we put that as a priority. That's money. We want to make sure that the licensee shows that their license is current. We don't want to receive calls saying, well, why isn't my license current? I submitted payment 2 weeks ago. So we do pride ourselves in processing those rather quickly. And so that's why you'll see really low amounts on the renewals because we do them pretty much immediately as soon as we receive them. With household movers, I know that it takes a little bit longer because there are more requirements. So we have the exam, we have fingerprinting that sometimes takes a little bit more time. And sometimes also there's missing information. Sometimes movers have documentation that they provided that isn't correct and or corrections need to be made with Secretary of State if they're a corporation. So there's a lot more involved in a household mover application, and that can also prolong processing times with how long it takes us. And normally it's a back and forth, right? Communicating, making sure they have the insurance, the proper insurance and requirements are met. So we're happy to provide you more information if that's what you would like to see across the board. But those are a little bit of instances of what might occur and why you might see fluctuation in timeframes.
Yeah.
Overall, but we could definitely try to provide a little more detail if that's more helpful.
I think so.
Yeah. Sure.
And on that issue of the applicant for the House of Good Liver, who is currently processing the background check?
It's a DOJ, Department of Justice.
So not the FBI. They were previously.
Yeah, no, it goes to the Department of Justice and then it routes out and they do the whole check on the DOJ, in-state and FBI.
So it does run through the FBI database. And so how far back is that background check? Is it like the full FBI background check? So say you're 40 and you had an incident when you were 19.
Whatever's currently on that applicant's record will show on that background check. So any current or past convictions that they have had will show on that background check for us to review.
So the prudent course of action for someone who's applying is to put down everything, regardless of whether they think potentially expunged, et cetera. Put down everything. And what are the specific classifications that would disqualify?
So we don't require them to provide that information in their application in household movers. They're not required to provide us a listing of what their convictions are because they do fingerprinting and they complete that through a live scan operator where they digitally get their fingerprints done. DOJ actually does all that background summary and provides it to the Bureau. So the applicant is not required to provide that information to the Bureau.
Okay, so there's not a disqualification because you weren't forthcoming in information because you're not asked to provide the information.
Not with household movers.
Okay.
So when there is a response where there's a match, where there's a record, it then actually moves. We have a staff person who then takes it from licensing, reviews that, contacts the applicant, learns about the background, and does an evaluation. So in the example you gave, right, this happened when I was 19. I'm now, 40 years ago, right? And I'm trying to do my math. And there's been nothing since. She'll look at that. She'll contact the applicant, give the applicant an opportunity to provide additional information. Then she will write an assessment of whether or not she thinks we can move forward and issue a license. So in that case, that would be the likely outcome. Or if it's something more recent, something concerning, she then conducts a further investigation.
Yeah, just so maybe I can just add a little bit of information and context to this. There are actually very specific criteria for all the programs that all programs must follow if there's a criminal history for the applicant. So when the conviction occurred is only one of the factors. But what I can tell you is that the factor, well, first of all, they're in the rules, so I'm happy to provide you with those specific sections where you can see them. But what I can tell you is that the criteria is very strict. And so we do have to meet a fairly high burden if we're going to deny an application based on a criminal conviction. So that part at least I can tell you. Yeah.
And the Bureau has an entire process in place for that. So there's an analyst who's been specifically trained on what those criteria are. She'll put her report together, but that's not the final. Then it's reviewed by her manager, and there are additional layers of review before an application is denied because of the criminal background.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions online by the council?
Just a comment from Tom Keepers. Just want to commend the licensing group for measuring your turns in weeks and days and not years. And as much as that's humorous, there's a peer department in California that we've got licensees that have waited years and they don't even hear back. So again, you you don't want to be, it's not the smart kid in the dumb role. You guys are, it's just really great that you're measuring in weeks and days. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Is there any questions in the public or from the public in the room? Any questions from the public online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Great, thank you so much. I would like to hand it over now to Claire.
Thank you. Good pivot there, Jacqueline. So next up on the agenda is the laboratory update, but I'm thinking we can take a 10-minute break. Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sarah?
This is the moderator. Can you hear me?
Are we still muted? Yeah. Oh, the sound's muted. Sarah, can you hear us?
This is the moderator. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, great. We're going
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Thank you, Joanne. Yeah. Okay. So we are back from recess. Thank you, everyone. And we are going to turn it over to Jacob Becker to provide the update on all things laboratory.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Jacob Becker. I am Bureau's laboratory manager. And today I'll be doing the laboratory update for this advisory council meeting. There have been a couple of big changes to the lab. In the previous meeting that took place in October of 2025, I mentioned that we converted 2 vacant textile technician positions over to laboratory testing analyst positions, and that both were filled. Both Daniel and Caleb are fully trained now, doing the current testing procedures, and they're doing phenomenal. Also, I mentioned that we were in the works for replacing our full-scale burn room. This is 16 CFR 1633, and I'll kind of talk about it a little bit later. But we entered into a contract with DTAC to produce the equipment and then do install as well. And the equipment is with us now. We are just waiting on the install, which should take place in the middle of June of this year, so next month. And once it's installed, we'll be able to resume 16 CFR 1633 testing that we have been unable to do since 2024 when the equipment started malfunctioning. So super exciting. And then in the previous meeting, I mentioned that the Bureau secured its first set of online products. There was 4 products total. There was 2 bed pillows, 1 beanbag chair, and 1 comforter. Both of the bed pillows were sent to enforcement for plumage compositional failures. What that means is that maybe somebody, this is just an example, maybe somebody listed that it had 100% down in the product, and it turned out that it was 50% down and 50% polyester. That would be a failure and be a violation. That is similar to what happened. The beanbag chair also went to enforcement for action for being unlicensed. It turned out that their law label had an incorrect registry number. That's an automatic failure. And then lastly, the comforter was a moderate violation, which failed finish size. This means that they were notified of what was wrong with their product, and then also they are not going to receive reimbursement. This was actually a finish size violation. So imagine you're buying a comforter, it's claiming 90 inches, and it turns out that it's 80 inches. Your toe is broken off out of the comforter, so that's not good. So the plan is that we are going to do more online product sampling in the coming months. There will be a little delay to this since we are dealing with tenant improvements and then also the burn room install. It's going to take up a significant portion of the lab's time and space. And moving on to a quick little update and an ask from the thermal insulation manufacturers. We'll update for them. The Bureau is working on the July edition of the Thermal Insulation Directory. We need all updates and fees in by June 15th. If you have any questions, please contact DHGS.directory at dca.ca.gov. Scott's also been reaching out, so everybody should kind of already be moving towards sending that stuff in. He's pretty diligent when it comes to directory. Okay, and then lastly is some outreach updates for the lab. So January 14th, 2026, we made a brief presentation with the Green Science Policy Institute to go over recent TB117-2013 results and FR chemical testing. A lot of this is a mix between the previous advisory council and this advisory council meeting statistics. And then the IAPFLA conference, or the International Association of Bedding, Furniture, Labeling Officials, this time, conference took place in Detroit, Michigan on April 28th to the 30th. We were only able to attend the government members meeting, which took place on the 28th. But in that meeting, we nominated and elected new members of the board of directors and decided that next year's conference will be a virtual conference. Okay. And then now I'll be jumping into statistics. And the actual laboratory update starts on page 45. That's the title page. Please turn the page to page 46, which is Technical Bulletin 117-2013. For those who don't know, Technical Bulletin 117-2013 is the Bureau's smoldering standard for upholstered furniture. In this test, we're testing every layer in the product that counts as foam material or a fabric or a barrier or decking. Most of the time, it's a cover fabric, maybe some polyester fiber batting, and then polyurethane foam. Each one of those is put into a mock-up frame, and it's tested to kind of create a crevice, a back cushion, and then a seat cushion. And then there's a little notch for a cigarette to sit. The cigarette's ignited, it's placed into that crevice, and it's allowed to go for 45 seconds, and it's covered by a white sheet, a white cotton blend sheet. And depending on what the result is, it either passes or fails. All that information between all the different layers is compiled, and then an assessment is basically provided at the end saying that this product would either pass or fail TB117-2013. So it's a pretty time-consuming test. But going to the chart here, over the last 2 years, the Bureau's tested 71 samples for TB117. This is unique samples, so this would be 71 chairs, couches, whatever, not just layers. So that's pretty impressive that we have a 100% pass rate. So the industry, keep up, doing a great job. Also just want to give another shout out to the testing analysts, Daniel and Caleb. They come in every day with a great attitude, and they're super efficient at testing. It's really fun to watch them because they're like surgeons. You'd think that you can just take a baseball bat and like break the furniture apart and say like, hey, that's 80% polyurethane foam and 20% polyester. It doesn't work that way. Everything's weighed, and there's a lot of attention to detail that goes into it. Now, moving on to page 47 here, which is 16 CFR 1633. This is the federal government's open flame flammability requirements on mattresses. Pretty much you put 2 burners up to a mattress and allow it to burn. It's kind of like a flamethrower, pretty cool. And as previously stated in the last council meeting and also earlier in my update, we've been unable to test this since 2024, but we're expecting by the end of summer, we'll at least have the equipment up and go into accreditation with the hope that we are testing products by the end of summer. So that might be reflected in the next advisory council meeting, just kind of depending on how things go, but it will definitely be in 2027, we'll have some results there. So I'm excited for that. Now turning to page 48 here is the thermal insulation update. Thermal insulation is multiple things. If you go into Home Depot or you've done like a DIY project, redoing your installation, or you've hired a contractor for it, you'll know this thing called R value. There's a value that goes into it that's its thermal resistance and its thermal, like how well it insulates your house. That's the main thing you think of, but there's a lot of other tests that go into this that you would just assume like all these products would pass. There's corrosions, there's smoldering, there's flammability, there's densities, and all that is included into these statistics here. And there are a couple of quarters here that have zeros, and in those 2 quarters in March 31st, 2025 and September 30th, 2025. We were transitioning over from having 2 accrediting bodies. We were originally with the National Voluntary Laboratory Accreditation Program, or NAVLAP, and we switched over to having them with our furniture. The accreditation was through our furniture accreditation service. So now there's just one accreditation every other year. It is very time consuming, and I'm very thankful to Sue Robinson for figuring that out and getting it together. So in those 2 quarters, there are some zeros. Thermal insulation has become more of a priority for us in the lab in the past couple of years. The last update, we were sitting at a 29% failure rate for thermal insulation samples, and now after this last set of testing, we are at a 21% failure rate. And kind of reflecting on those numbers, we've noticed that the most troublesome, I guess not most troublesome, but the products that we're running into that have more air in them is battings or rolls of cellulose and fiberglass, and that has to do a lot with density. So a little PSA here. When you are putting in fiberglass, make sure that you're following the values of thickness, because it can drastically change it. Even like half an inch can totally knock it out of compliance. So we are trying to prioritize thermal insulation, but there will be probably another 0 for the next advisory council meeting, and that's just because of the tenant improvements and the burn room going in. And this is just, this testing takes a lot of space, it takes a lot of time, a lot of people. So we're going to be shifting over towards just kind of making sure that the building improvements go well and that burn room can go in. So it will slow down a bit, but we will pick it up after all this is done. And now moving on to bedding testing, which starts on page 49. Bedding is 2 different things. It is finish size and net weight. Finish size, as I stated earlier, is if you buy a comforter, for instance, and it claims that it is 90 inch by 90 inch, it should be 90 inch by 90 inch and not 80 by 80. The different products, for instance, that have this requirement are comforters, bed pillows, mattress pads, mattresses, and then sleeping bags. The other test, as I mentioned, is net weight. Net weight is the net weight of filling materials in the product. It has to do with fuel load for a lot of this stuff. And the bedding products that have that requirement are sleeping bags, box springs, mattresses, just to name a few. And over the past 2 years, now that we're looking at the chart here now, there's been 82% of bedding products failed testing of 1 or 2 of those tests. In January of 2025, the Bureau released some guidance and the technical bulletins to ensure greater compliance with the industry. And we are sending out advisory notices to notify businesses if they're compliant or not compliant and trying to get them on board with it. There have been a couple failures that have been sent out for things that the technical bulletins didn't really change. So tune in next time for a little bit more updates, and hopefully we can get this number lower. Now going to overall testing, which is on page 50. Over the past 2 years, the lab has tested 167 samples of either furniture, bedding, or thermal insulation, with the past 2 quarters being a pretty big push here. We tested 58 samples between the 2. And overall, 121 of the 167 samples are passing, which is resulting in a 28% failure rate. And also here, bedding and thermal insulation seem to have the highest failure rates right now. And it should be noted too that furniture or that mattresses are not currently being tested. Also, what's not included in this chart is labeling failures or FR chemical labeling and testing as well. That will be in the next couple minutes here. And then also a last note here is that there will be additional information about lab failures and enforcement action in the enforcement update a little bit later. Now moving towards page 51 here, which is flame retardant chemical testing. We've reviewed 66 flammability labels for flame retardant chemical statements, all of which have had the checkbox marked as does not contain FR chemicals. And the second table here is over the past 2 years, we've sent 12 unique samples to DTSC. That means 12 different pieces of furniture or bedding, depending on what it is. And that could be multiple layers per. And what we're trying to target is to see if the product contains over 1,000 parts per million flame retardant chemicals through the whole product. And there have been some gaps. A contract expired in 2024, which made it hard for us to send samples over to DTSC. We couldn't do the work because there's no contract in place. And then in 2025, DTSC began updating their methods and hiring some new staff for testing. And we're currently working with them for our next shipment. We have samples ready and we're just kind of waiting for the go ahead for them to get trained up and for their accreditation kind of sink in. So the next council meeting, I'll definitely have updates for that. And then one of the last pages here, this is page 52, and this is the label review. Over the past 2 years, 123 wall labels have been reviewed for compliance with Home Furnishings and Thermal Insulation Act. Of these, 18 basically followed it to a T and resulted in reimbursement. 28 had minor violations, which resulted in reimbursement and a letter stating what was wrong with the product. Most of this is like spelling errors or things that don't really affect consumers all too much. There's not really a lot of harm that goes into it. And then we had 51 of the 123 that were moderate violations, which resulted in non-reimbursement, and the violations were more severe than just spelling errors and things like that. And a lot of this is spelled out on one of the previous packets as well. And then also with that non-reimbursement, we sent them a letter saying that what the problems were exactly. And then 26 of those, of the 123, had major violations, which resulted in enforcement action. Overall, we have 15% passing, while 85 failed label review. And then below here, or below the chart is, or the table is a chart, and it kind of shows every quarter with pass and fails in different colors. I would like to open up to council members in the room for any comments.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, appreciate the report. 2 items stand out as just like dramatic failures, right? So the bedding and the labeling. So my assumption is that there's no real penalty for non-compliance. Otherwise, how would these numbers be so awful? And is the goal of the Bureau just an educational goal in this respect? Is these are not significant issues or concerns, or why is it just accepted that these rates are so terrible?
So in regards to the bedding, we noticed bedding was a problem for a while now, actually, and that's why we went through and we updated the technical bulletins and released them to the public. There was a lot of talk with the industry, especially at the IAFLO conferences, about bedding. People didn't really understand it. We were one of the only states that requires finish size. So there was a little bit of disconnect there. We put the technical bulletins out, and we've been having back and forth with industry. We're sending out more advisory letter notices. Currently, we're just kind of seeking to get more education out there, but we will start enforcing in the future. Just want to give time to people to kind of come up to speed on it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the report. I would say that I'm excited to hear about the burn room and the change there. And I would ask you to look to the potluck committee for the idea of great pictures and include pictures as they did in your report of before and after of the burn room.
Sure.
So it sounds like exciting. Look forward to that.
Unfortunately, hot dogs cannot be cooked on the new I've already tried with our second. So, yeah. But we will, I will provide pictures in the next update.
Can we maybe take a tour when it's ready, the next meeting, or when it's appropriate?
Absolutely, and I would say you're welcome anytime if you find yourself in Sacramento for another reason.
I remember the tour the last time I was here was very.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it too. So I think we all are. So absolutely.
Oh yeah, sorry. Are there any comments for the council members online? Any comment from public in the room?
Jacob.
Oh, is there any, Can we open it up for online public comment, please?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, that concludes the laboratory update for this council meeting. I am going to turn it over to Rolly Jacoby, the Bureau's Southern Supervising Special Investigator.
Thank you, Jacob. That's a long title. Good morning, council members online and who are present here in the room. My name is Rolly Jacoby. I'm the Supervising Special Investigator for Southern California Special Investigation Chief. I'll be providing the enforcement program updates. I'd like to direct you to Agenda 11 in your advisory council packet. I'll begin on the top of page 54. Enforcement program update and statistical review. So there's 4 units in our enforcement program. The first one is compliance unit, handles incoming complaints and death investigations. Northern Special Investigations Unit, SIU, handles complaint cases, directed and random inspections in Northern California, Central Coast, and Central Valley. And Southern Special Investigations Unit, SIU, handles complaint cases, directed and random inspections in Southern Inland counties, including Kern, Los Angeles, Riverside, Orange, San Diego, San Bernardino, and Imperial counties. Case management, lastly, they are an important part of our group. Schedule citation review conferences, review citation and field reports, provides analyst support to the field, gathers information for enforcement, program logs and statistics, and manages the program's collection, RIO's collection program. And now moving on to a couple activities that I like, the enforcement updates and activities in the field. Compliance sweeps is the first one. October 29th through 30th, 2025, the Bureau enforcement staff conducted a 2-day statewide enforcement sweep, contacting 34 household moving businesses. 6 were cited for a total of $12,000 in penalties, not including delinquent fees. 1 business operating without a valid compensation insurance was referred to the local district attorney. November 19th through 20th, 2025, Bureau staff conducted a 2-day compliance sweep in Southern California, focused on unlicensed and delinquent ear and healthy businesses. Field staff contacted 47 businesses, 14 of which received citations, totaling $5,250, not including citation fees, delinquent fees. And more recent, in March 18, 2026, a statewide compliance sweep focused on unlicensed and delinquent ear and healthy businesses resulted in issuance of 16 citations totaling $4,000, not including delinquent fees. And second part of this segment is cases that are forwarded to Attorney General offices. So the Bureau continues to work closely with Los Angeles and State Attorney General's office on a case against a Riverside County household mover whose license is currently suspended after a decision from the Office of Administrative Hearings. The owner of the business has appealed the order, leading to additional court filings and hearings scheduled throughout October 2026. In December 2025, the Bureau collaborated with the State Attorney General in Northern California to enforce a default decision order revoking the registration for a business owner who was licensed under one name while operating under another. And another segment of this is actually collaboration with the local DA and also the FMCSA, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Our field enforcement units from Southern California, Central and Northern Special Investigations Unit participate in quarterly task force meetings, of which strategies are discussed, and participating agencies include Department of Insurance, California Department of Justice, Department of Weights and Measures, California Department of Public Health, and district attorneys throughout San Diego, San Bernardino, and Contra Costa counties. We have ongoing cooperation between the Bureau and district attorney offices, and that has strengthened our field operations and investigative support in the field. Lastly, on February 3rd, 2026, the Bureau investigated a representative from, the Bureau invited a representative from FMCSA, and hopefully this will be a continuing effort with that agency, where they join our task force meetings on a quarterly basis. So we're looking forward to having their reps join our meetings. This partnership and also resource sharing is helpful for our field and also for their agencies. And now I would like to transfer this introduction to Special Investigator Oliver Manila. My favorite part of this segment is the enforcement highlights for the field.
Thank you, Relly. Good morning, council members. Thank you for joining us. Relly mentioned I'm Oliver Manila. I'm a Special Investigator, Police out of San Diego. Today I'll be sharing updates on the Bureau's efforts that have led to significant consumer assistance outcomes, as well as our ongoing support for our licensees and sometimes unlicensed businesses that we regulate. So, the Bureau remains proactive in conducting inspections and investigating unlicensed businesses. Sorry, if you're following along, I'm on page 55. And assisting with mediation with complaints alleging losses from unlicensed businesses and or improper handling of services. Consumers often file complaints across all regulated industries for issues related to damage, household goods and property, mishandling of claims, overcharges or inflated charges, dishonored extended service warranties, down payment or deposit issues, responded responsiveness, delivery delays, incomplete correct contract agreements, and deficient invoices. Between September 1, 2025 and April 1, 2026, this work led to over $65,000 in savings to the public. As you can see, it's broken down below. I believe the last advisory council, it was reported that the savings to the public was $114,000. So like in the past year, it's about $179,000, which is seems a very remarkable figure. So home furnishings, thermal insulation, savings to the public is $21,324.93. Electronic and appliance repair, $24,912. Savings to the public. Household movers, $19,518 savings to the public. I want to talk about some of the work that's led to those savings to the public. Here, just some examples here. In October 2025, the Bureau mediated a case involving an appliance repair service dealer's multiple failed attempts to repair the ice maker on a refrigerator. After the first few attempts, the business never returned to complete the repair. After working with the business and the consumer, the Bureau helped the consumer obtain a refund of $671.40. In October 2025, the Bureau helped a consumer who was unable to recover their deposit after canceling a moving contract. With the Bureau's intervention, the consumer received a full refund of $1,085. In the same month, the Bureau helped a consumer whose extended warranty had recently expired, which could prevent the repair or replacement of a washing machine. With the Bureau's involvement and cooperation by the service contract administrator, the consumer received a $1,955 gift card for a replacement machine. In November 2025, the Bureau helped a consumer obtain $1,400 for a dishwasher covered by a protection plan after multiple failed repair attempts. Similarly, in the same month, the Bureau helped a consumer obtain $4,749 to replace a refrigerator covered by a protection plan and $250 for loss of food products. The investigation determined that one of the technicians contracted to conduct the repair did not properly document reason for the unit's failure, which led the service contract administrator to initially deny the consumer's claim. On November 3, 2025, a newly licensed furniture retailer in Carmichael, California, thanked one of the Bureau investigators for their efforts in getting them licensed and educating them on the importance of working with manufacturers that adhere to law label regulations. December 2025, the Bureau helped a consumer obtain a refund in a household mover case involving overcharges and missing items during an interstate move. The carrier was educated about the violation of federal rules and agreed to refund the consumer $2,400. Also in December 2025, the Bureau helped resolve a complaint regarding damage to a home's flooring and missing and damaged household goods. The licensed mover agreed to refund the consumer $1,000. January of 2026, Bureau staff resolved consumer concerns about a licensee who failed to deliver a sofa. The consumer received a full refund of $4,249. Staff also remedied a complaint against a service contract provider who had delayed approving repairs to a love seat and sofa, resulting in a refund of $3,199. In February 2025, the Bureau addressed the misleading advertisement of a bedding product sold at a well-known nationwide furniture and bedding retailer. A blanket was advertised as 100% cotton, but it was later discovered that it was 100% polyester following an allergic reaction. The consumer that purchased the blanket was sensitive to polyester, and after the Bureau contacted the business corrected the labels and offered a free set of cotton bedding sheets to provide an extra layer of protection. February 2026, the Bureau resolved a service contract dispute involving two unrepairable treadmills that were covered by an extended protection plan, which resulted in a consumer refund of $1,318. Recently, March 2026, the Bureau investigated a case involving damage to household goods. When information from the Bureau's investigation, the consumer was later won a $4,713 judgment in small claims court. All right, so yeah, a lot of refunds going on. So cease letters between September 2025 and March 2028, the enforcement program issued 73 cease letters to businesses found to be operating or advertising without a valid Bureau license. 38 household movers, 4 home furnishings, thermal insulation businesses, and 31 electronic and appliance repair businesses. These letters notify businesses that a Bureau license is required and include information about how they can obtain a license and inform them that continued operation may result in administrative citation. Collections program. Initiated in October 2024, the Bureau's collections program continues to manage outstanding fees and fines resulting from unpaid citations. The process includes 3 notices to the business, allowing them an opportunity to pay the outstanding fines before their debt is referred to the Franchise Tax Board or DCA collections. Between July 1, 2025 and March 31, 2026, the Bureau sent 150 collection letters to businesses across all Bureau programs. 43 businesses were referred to collections. To date, the Bureau's collections programs have resulted in the collection of $22,570. I'm going to turn it over back to Raleigh, and he will share some updates on our Bureau process.
Thank you, Oliver. So I direct your attention to page 57, the very bottom page. Enforcement procedure updates, training, and enforcement readiness. In April, the Southern California Special Investigations Unit implemented a zip code-based assignment model to strengthen accountability and improve coordination across all regulated populations. The new model supports proactive and recurring business inspections, prioritizing coverage in high-density areas and minimizing overlap among special investigators in the field. Additionally, the Bureau is working on processes with statewide training on the issuance of infractions. This effort enhances investigator readiness and ensures consistent application of enforcement tools across the state. The Bureau's Compliance Unit, CU, is updating several procedures, including updates to desk investigation procedure for ear and Hufti to now include unlicensed household mover cases. A revised report on investigations, a refined criminal background procedure for licensed applicants, a comprehensive procedural manual to assist compliance unit analysts, procedures to follow up on issued citations, and procedures specifically focused on complaints against household movement licensees with no prior enforcement history. Now I would like to hand over the compliance unit manager, Elizabeth Eden, for an overview of the statistical updates for enforcement.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Eden, and I'm the Compliance Unit Manager at the Bureau. And I will be providing the Enforcement Program Statistical Update starting on page 58 of your packet. First section is complaints received and investigations initiated. All complaints that the Bureau receives are processed by the Compliance Unit. This involves a thorough review of that complaint to determine jurisdiction. And if needed, we will reach out to consumers to get additional information if that is required to determine jurisdiction. Complaints that are non-jurisdictional are closed without investigation, and a letter is sent to the consumer providing them a list of other agencies that are able to assist them. Complaints that are jurisdictional are open for further investigation and mediation. If I can draw your attention to the table on page 59, this table shows the number of incoming complaints between April 2024 and March 2026, along with the number referred for investigation and the number closed without investigation. As you may notice, there is a slight dip in the number of complaints received in that last quarter of 2025, and this may be because we are receiving fewer non-jurisdictional complaints. However, I can draw your attention to the total number of complaints referred for investigation across all three program areas. This is the highest that it has been in the last 2 years, and this is due to an increase in the number of jurisdictional complaints. Moving along to page 6 and investigations. So compliance unit analysts perform desk investigations and mediate cases for licensed electronic appliance repair complaints, home furnishings and thermal insulation complaints, and recently household mover complaints as well. The compliance unit also handles investigations into criminal background applications, fee waivers, and lab failures. Any delinquent referrals are forwarded to the field for investigation, and the field also handles cases involving egregious complaints. SIU, or their Special Investigations Unit, is located throughout California. And in addition to investigation or investigating egregious complaints, they also handle unlicensed cases across all three program areas. And they also collect samples for our lab. The chart on page 61 shows the number of investigations conducted between April 2024 and March 2026. You can see that the number varies from quarter to quarter, but has steadily increased over time for all three program areas. Particularly for electronic and appliance repair, the number closed still remains relatively high. For home furnishings and thermal installation, the number received is still high, but the closures are lower. And that's because when we tend to receive an influx of more of those cases, our focus is on doing our due diligence and investigation. So you will see those closure numbers reflected in upcoming quarters, but that is where our focus lies when we receive more of those complaints. And then for household movers, the numbers are still relatively high. Closures are down, but as I mentioned before, as of March 2026, the compliance unit has received training and has begun to take on both licensed and unlicensed household mover cases. I also noticed that the numbers are a little lower, and that's because we did have the retirement of 2 seasoned investigators. But we are expecting those numbers to increase, like I said, with the compliance unit taking on more of these cases. I would next like to draw your attention to the enforcement program citations assessed. So in order to achieve compliance, enforcement staff use a variety of methods, including education, cease letters, and citations. The chart on the next page details the number of citations issued between April 2024 and March 2026. The chart also includes information about the total citation fine amount assessed and the total amount collected from these citations. The amounts assessed and collected have continued to increase across all program areas with the exception of this last quarter. Again, we do believe that this is due to the retirement of 2 of our seasoned investigators. The number of citations issued has also decreased for ear and Hufti. However, the total citations issued was high at the end of 2025. The slight decrease may be due to the work that comes after citations are issued, such as preparing for citation review conferences. This work tends to take a lot more time, which could explain why we have fewer citations issued during those quarters. And that decrease may also be due to the fact that more businesses are coming into compliance, as we've been finding through our investigations. You will also notice that in some of our home furnishings and thermal insulation quarters, the citation fine has been higher. This is due to an increase in the number of lab failure citations being issued during those timeframes and as a result of statewide sweeps. The overall amount cited between January and March of 2025 has decreased a little bit, or has increased, sorry. And that can be attributed to an increase in the number of Ear and Humpty citations issued because of sweeps. And you will notice also that the number of citations for household movers in the last quarter of 2025 was high, and that is due to a sweep that was conducted. I would like to pinpoint that while these numbers in some areas might appear to be low, the Bureau is actively planning sweeps across all 3 program areas to bring those numbers up, so we are expecting an increase in those. I would last like to draw your attention to our lab failure statistics. So our Special Investigations Unit performs product units, so they will go out into the field and they'll visit different retailers and they'll pull samples of upholstered furniture and bedding. Those then come back to our lab for testing. And then any products that fail are sent to the compliance unit where staff investigate and then write citations to address those failures. Between April 2024 and March 2026, you will notice that the number of advisory letters has increased. And this is due to the fact that we did have some citations and failures that we had to address also with the retailer in addition to the manufacturer. The total fines assessed has increased over time, and that is due to the fact that lab failure fines have increased, and usually that's determined based off of the severity of the violation, but also we look at the the manufacturer's prior lab failure history when we're doing those fines. So if they do have a prior failure history and it is a high severity violation, that fine will tend to be higher. And that is the end of the enforcement program statistical update. I will hand it back over to Robin.
Thank you, Elizabeth. With that, that concludes the enforcement program updates. I'd like to open up the questions for council members in the room.
Yes, thank you. I have a number of questions here. So on page 54, under the Attorney General case, there's a statement made that one of the requirements will be taking a course on Household Good Movers Act and regulations. Where is this course offered?
So, as you know, so that's a ruling from the judge.
Okay.
So this is something, Alda Aguirre, who is the enforcement chief, is aware that the Bureau we don't have continuing education requirements for renewing a license or anything like that.
Yeah.
So this is something she's aware that there is this order from the judge, and the Bureau is going to put together some materials to help the individual meet that requirement.
We are willing to offer such a course, but I just thought, I'm currently unaware of any course like this.
Yes, agreed.
Brilliant, brilliant decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we look at the involvement of the FMCSA in February, was that a field representative stationed currently in California or someone from the capital came out?
That particular representative was actually from Nevada. There are 3 representatives in the state of California currently, and they're under training at this time, I believe. So the representative from Nevada joined this meeting, and we've been dealing with him for many, many years now. And so he was the person that's involved with those task force meetings.
And they have complete understanding of the MOU and all that stuff. Right?
Yes.
Okay. When I look at these enforcement actions, I have some trepidation about it. So first of all, my position is always that the biggest damage to consumers, the regulated industry, and the taxpayers of the state of California is those that fall completely outside of the compliance group. They're unlicensed operators. And in my mind, that should always be a primary focus. And I don't see that at all in this report, not at all. In statistics, but not in these issues. You're talking about savings to the public when someone is getting scammed, gets a bait and switch move. You know, you could add huge numbers to your savings to the public right up the top from addressing that. The other concern I always have with this, and I've mentioned this a number of times, is that the Bureau's legal authority on claims is the communication process. The legal authority is, did you respond in a timely fashion to their complaint? Did you send out the proper documentation? Once it was received, did you come to some kind of settlement or closure of that in a certain time frame? When you meet those requirements, everything else falls outside the scope of the legal responsibility or ability to enforce of the Bureau. Now, I get there's a lot of Buffalo stuff that goes on, and you get scared and they pay and all that sort of thing. But when I see that a case involving damage to household goods with information of the Bureau investigation caused a small claims individual who's obviously not a judge, pro tem, whatever, attorney sitting in that chair, to take legal action against a mover, I would advise them immediately to go to Superior Court, because that doesn't have any bearing in the law. So I'm always concerned about that. I get what you're attempting to do. You want to help people. That's an honorable deal. But I think that there needs to be some caution exercised when we look at claims, because there's just a lot to it that I guess you can go in and get a mover to make some kind of settlement, and then everybody feels happy except for the mover, right? So they're all, but I don't know that it's necessarily the right way to proceed.
Right. So I'd like to respond to both of those points, if I may. So the comment that you don't see in the packet a focus on unlicensed, concern about unlicensed, I'm not sure I agree with you. Certainly there is more ink on consumer assistance. I get that, but there is conversation, mention in the packet about compliance sweeps. Those are particularly focused on unlicensed activity. That is a significant focus of the enforcement activity. And I think it was one of the three, I'm not sure which one, mentioned that there are ongoing plans for compliance sweeps. We have found for household movers that those are particularly effective. They take a lot of planning. Household mover cases for sweeps are a little more complicated because unlike Ear or Hufty, there's not necessarily a brick and mortar business to go into. So it requires a slightly different approach on the part of enforcement, but the goal has been to conduct a sweep on a monthly basis, and that the focus of those is particularly on unlicensed activity. So that is definitely a focus on the enforcement.
Thank you.
program.
And I get that that's harder. I get that that's a lot harder
but it's
than the
doable.
lay down jobs. The claim stuff is lay down work.
Yeah.
But I would tell you that I just think that it needs to continue to be reinforced that needs to be the primary focus. That people that are following completely outside the rules, and that's what makes California unique, right, to a lot of states or even the feds. I would tell you that, the one thing that I always hate about regulatory schemes is bureaucrats that say regulations are for the regulated. And California is different than that, and our regs are written different than that. They're for anyone that performs that type of service, regardless of whether they have the permit. And every single thing they do, I know I played a part in the writing of the modification of those laws in 2011. And anything that transpires after is a chargeable incident. So it's not just the mere fact that they don't have a permit. Then after that, they didn't do proper evaluation. They didn't do, all those things are compiling facts that can be added on and get people to not want to participate in the illegal aspects of the business. Because unaddressed, the illegal aspect of the moving business is as profitable as you could imagine. It's extremely profitable to operate without legal authority, without workers' compensation, without insurance. It's a 40% margin business. So, I mean, I would say, you know, get them in line and you know, I'm relatively unsympathetic about it. I think that they need to be in compliance. And so that's what I would say to that. What else did I have here? When you speak about enforcement procedures update, the last sentence says, procedures specifically focused on complaints against household good licensees with no prior enforcement history. Does that mean that those people are handled more gently, that it's looked at maybe as an educational process in that first meeting, or what does that mean?
Yeah, of course. So since we just started taking on household movers cases at the beginning of March, we thought this would be a good area to start. They are still handled with the same level of, I'm losing the word I want, but we still handle it with the same level of care and discipline as we would the other cases that have prior enforcement history. In these cases in particular, and actually for all household movers cases, our primary goal is that communication that you mentioned. So on the part of the compliance unit, our job is really to reach out to the consumer, find out, for example, if it's a claim against damages, hey, did you file this in writing within this time frame? Reaching out to the business and saying, did you receive this from the consumer? And then really kind of just being that go-between and communicating with them. So they are all handled with that same level of thoroughness. It's just that this was an area that we wanted to start in, and we are fully expanding or fully expecting to expand out into other areas of complaints with prior enforcement history.
And just to clarify, Steve, this is a little bit internal, right? Because previously all household movers cases went to the field staff. So these cases were previously handled by special investigators in the field, and they're now being handled in the unit that Elizabeth oversees. With the analyst staff rather than investigators if they need certain, if they're low level and things like that. And so she's just in the process with her staff of developing procedures so that they can handle those cases. The goal with that is to lessen the burden on the field investigators so that they have more time and they're more available to work on the more complex and more egregious cases. So it's not that those cases were, it's just this is an internal shift, and that's what Elizabeth is reporting on.
Just finally, on the cease letters, I just wish that last sentence, the language was more to the point. It says, may result in administrative action. So you send someone a cease letter, and it may result in somebody following up. And to me, that's nonsense. It has to result, it will result in a follow-up in some way. That a cease letter, you know, without some kind of follow-up or enforcement is worthless. And it becomes less and less relevant the more times you don't do it. So, because these people talk to each other, oh yeah, I got 2 of those before. Doesn't mean anything. So without that being a will result, I think you've got potential issues, or the validity of the time spent in developing the cease letter becomes a waste of energy and not worth doing.
So I do know that it's a priority for enforcement and the management and the staff of enforcement to follow up on those cease letters. So I think the word may is probably in the packet to allow for, there might be circumstances where somebody has an application pending or something like that. So I think that's just what that wiggle room is, but I can assure you that there is definite follow-up when those cease letters are sent to make sure that those businesses are coming into compliance and they are being licensed or they are subject to a citation.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I tell you guys that the program in California is unique. You don't see it in other places. So any kind of enforcement of the regulations. And I would tell you that while you're developing a nice relationship with FMCSA, I would tell you that they do a horrible job of enforcing their regulations. Maybe with the exception of the periodic sweeps, but on a daily basis, when consumers call with hostage situations, no help at all.
Thank you,
So
Steve.
appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. With that, are there any questions online? Council members online? Are there any questions from the public in the room?
I want to go back to Steve's comment about the class on the Household Members Act and regulations that was ordered by the judge. Were the enforcement regulations ever adopted?
Yes.
Were disciplinary guidelines part of that, or?
I can answer that question. So what was implemented, I believe is in June 20.
Did you all hear the question online?
No. Do you want to repeat it?
Can you just repeat it? Because I don't.
Sure.
Yes.
So there was just a question about whether or not the enforcement regulations have been implemented. So I'm just specifying what has occurred since then. So the citation regulations have been implemented, and the substantial relationship criteria and rehabilitation criteria regarding criminal convictions has been implemented.
The reason I ask is usually if a class is required by a judge in an order, it's usually part of the disciplinary guidelines that are adopted by a program. And it's surprising to see that that was accepted by DCA. So did DCA give you any advice that you need to include that in your disciplinary guidelines, that you should adopt, or?
It hasn't come up. I know that there's, that we have it on our to-do to also implement disciplinary guidelines.
But they didn't?
No, not during the review process for this specific package that passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I was just curious.
Thank you.
Follow up on this question. Have those been published now? Because as of the last meeting, they were not published, the regs.
They were published. They've been published since they became effective.
So I mean, I maybe I'm not using the term of art properly. Do you have hard copies of those regulations? That's what I mean by published.
Published. Do you mean in the, okay,
Booklet.
maybe I'm getting specific. Are you talking about our law book? Our law book, or you're talking about?
Yeah,
whether
with
they
the
were?
updated regs.
Yes.
Yeah. You have them.
I do.
You do.
We
promise
sent,
you,
we sent
them
it to you.
Special delivery.
One for your team.
Thank you for always giving me.
And Sarah, can I ask the public if there's any questions online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raised hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, Sarah. And with that, I'd like to transfer the presentation to our content manager, Joanne Van, for an overview of the communications and education.
Thank you, Ron. Hi, everyone. I am Joanne Van. I am the content manager. I will be going over the communications and education updates starting on page 65 of the packet, which covers our outreach efforts since October 2025. Starting off with a press release, on December 23rd, 2025, the Bureau issued a press release on a statewide sweep of unlicensed and uninsured movers. This was timed with the winter holidays. We know it's a busy moving season, especially as consumers are taking time off for the holidays. This press release was issued in English and Spanish, and it was posted to our website, as well as our social media and DCA's website. Moving on to video. As a reminder, all of our videos are posted on DCA's YouTube channel and shared to the Bureau's website and social media as well. On October 23rd, 2025, the Bureau posted a video with helpful tips before buying a protection plan. It explains in simple terms what a protection plan is, what to look out for before buying one, and consumer rights in this area. On April 1st, 2026, when the packet was put together, this video had 147 views. As of today, May 7th, it has 182 views. The Bureau is also working on 2 videos which covers the documents and information that applicants need to know before applying for a license with the Bureau. The Ear Healthy video is currently in the production phase, and the HHM video is in the script writing phase. Once posted, these videos will be a helpful resource that our investigators will share with unlicensed businesses during inspections. As Chris Sanchez mentioned in our business modernization update, Ear Healthy renewals are coming to Connect. When those are launched, we will post an instructional video for Connect users on how to register for an account and how to link their license. And this video will be shared with businesses as a resource as well. Moving on to forms and publications. Our publications remain available to the public on the Bureau's website, and there will be a dedicated page on the web redesign that will make them easier to find. They will all be on one page. We also have printed copies that are shared at outreach events and that are available in the front lobby of the Bureau as well. A handful of the Bureau's forms are being updated for user friendliness. Forms that have already been updated include some for licensees, such as change of information, declaration of business activities, and the request for cancellation form. The principal complaint form for public use has been updated for user friendliness as well. And we are working on updating internal forms to be more efficient, including one that is a form that's used for infractions. As Jacqueline mentioned in the licensing update, for HHM, there are postcards with annual and quarterly overviews of quarterly report due dates that were designed and mailed out. These are also on our website, and when there's an upcoming deadline, they're posted to social media as well. For EAR, we have a guide called Write It Right, which covers proper documentation for items like receipts and estimates. It was updated to be more simplified, there's less jargon, and it is now easier to understand for both consumers and businesses. The updated guide will have a dedicated page on the website redesign, and it's currently being used by our investigators now to educate businesses during inspections. Moving on to social media. The Bureau continues to post weekly in English and Spanish, targeting all of our regulated industries and audience types. You can find our follower accounts for the past 4 quarters on page 66 of the packet. And you'll see that from June 30th, 2025 to March 31st, 2026, we had the following changes in our follower accounts. We had a 12.66% increase for Facebook, 8.63% increase for Instagram, 5.81% increase for LinkedIn, and 7.05 increase for X. I will just say that one of our challenges with social media is reaching our targeted audience, and that includes our industry members. And so I would like to ask for the help of our council members for your help in engaging with and sharing our social media posts. They contain a lot of tips that could be helpful to your industry. And so I myself will do a better job of reaching out, especially when there is a post that may interest your industry. So I thank you for your partnership on that. And on page 66 and 67 of the packet are examples of recent graphics that were posted to our social media. Moving on to website efforts, if you could flip to page 68 of the packet. The website has been a huge focus for our content efforts for the past 1.5 years. I want to say a special thank you to Chris Janis, who is in the room with us. He's been lending his skills to the project. Thank you so much. The bulk of 2025 was spent creating the design for the website and updating the content, which was a project that spanned across all of our units, all of our staff at the Bureau. And in January 2026, we began working with DCA to execute those elements. In March, DCA provided a first draft for us to review, and we received a second draft this week. Because the Bureau is unique in that we regulate multiple industries, we have a lot of information, and just the way that our content is set up is complex. We want to make sure that that information is reflected correctly in the redesign. We want to make sure that the features function properly, and we want to do all that while still complying with state web standards and a template that we are required to use. So I thank you all for your patience on that. This project is something that we're working on every day, and so it's going to happen. We're figuring it out. You'll see a mock-up of the homepage on page 68, and our priorities with that continue to be simple language, ease of navigation, and accessibility. Moving on to outreach events, the Bureau continues to participate in statewide outreach events to connect with and provide information to consumers, businesses, and state and local partners. Since October 2025, the Bureau attended 12 events. I would like to take a minute to thank our speakers, including Oliver Manila, who's in the room with us, Mary Lee, Delia Garcia, Destiny Wells, Teray McKinney, Alana Orjakovsky, Sue Zhu, Christopher Heron, May D, and Lizette Castro. Moving on to internal communications on page 70 of the packet. It's at the bottom of the page. Internal communications remains a priority for the Bureau to foster transparency and collaboration. In addition to our orientations, trainings, and potlucks, we hold all staff meetings every 6 months to discuss key updates. An internal newsletter is shared monthly to keep staff informed on the Bureau industry updates. And we also have bi-monthly staff features that are included with those newsletters to boost morale and team bonding. There have also been internal discussions of starting an industry newsletter as another way to share important information with licensees. I do not currently have a timeline on that or more details, but that is definitely something we're going to explore more once the website redesign is complete. That concludes the communications and education update. Are there any questions or comments from council members of the group?
Do you have a targeted launch date
for the website? I can't say for sure. The only thing I can confidently say is at least a few months.
There's a lot of back and forth right now because Joanne has to work with the iTech team at DCA, and so it's there's a lot of conversation and a lot of back and forth and making corrections and things like that. And then once we still need to do a broader internal review to make sure that all the content is accurate. So it's really far along, but still we have a little bit of ways before we're on the other side of the finish line.
I'm going to promise that we're working on it diligently. It's the only thing I can think about right now.
I would just commend you on this press release. So there was a press release. I would just say a couple of things. First of all, more press releases. And I might continue with that information, the first press release, which is kind of like, hey, be alert, be aware of bad actors, etc. And I would always leave that language in press releases, but the opening paragraph or two should be, during this particular quarter, we cited this many entities, or we sent cease letters to these people. And in my perfect world, that would include names of entities that you guys have dealt with, although that has seemed to be problematic for the Bureau. But at very least, the kind of statistical information that, not only are these nebulous bad actors out there, but we've addressed this many in this quarter. So I think that that's a value.
And I'll just say on that, I think there is shared interest in the Bureau to issue more press releases. So Joanne and I actually I can't remember, a few weeks ago, had a meeting with a number of the public affairs staff at DCA. And one of the main topics of conversation is how we can better facilitate getting press releases out, because those are always a joint effort between the Bureau and the Public Affairs Office at DCA.
I would just, again, reinforce that the number one tool of the enforcement team is the press release, that you are limited in staffing and location, et cetera, as to who you can address. But when names and amounts of citations are listed in the public record, those become impactful and may discourage others from being involved in that type of business. So I would just do everything I could to make those press releases as frequent and as robust as possible.
I'll take note of that. Thank you, Steve. And we'll be happy to share them. I hope I
Yeah,
have two
absolutely.
followers on your,
We'll
on your
publish
list.
them every-
I think I
Publish
know
every
what
single
it's
one of
for.
those.
Was there anything else from council members in the room? All right, council members online, any questions or comments? All right, questions or comments from public in the room? Sarah, can you please open it up for public comment online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
All right, I will now pass it off to Eileen Yap, who will be covering our legislative and regulatory updates.
Thank you, Joanne. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eileen Yap, and I am the policy manager for the Bureau. I will be providing the legislative and policy updates today. Materials related to these updates start on page 71 of your packet. So first, we have the regulatory proposal regarding the amendments to labeling requirements. This is the proposal that contains the material changes the Bureau is seeking, such as updates to labeling requirements, including updates to terminology, label content, and label templates. This proposal continues to be in progress. We are currently working with our DCA Regulatory Council to further revise the draft. Once we have finalized it, the Bureau plans to hold a public workshop where members of the Advisory Council and other interested parties may attend to discuss and provide feedback on the proposal. Next, we have the regulatory proposal regarding the Household Movers Act program, and specifically the proposal that would implement permit requirements. Specifically, the proposed regulations would establish and clarify the written examination process, the process for abandoned applications, notice requirements in the event of a change in permit holder information or a change in ownership, and the process for transfer of permits. And finally, the process for voluntary suspension of permits and restoration. This proposal is also in progress, and we received feedback from our DCA Regulatory Council on the initial draft, and we are currently in the process of revising it in response to that feedback. Next, there are two bills currently pending in the legislature regarding ignition interlock devices, or IID for short. Both bills are proposing amendments to Vehicle Code Section 23575.3, which the Bureau is mandated to enforce. You can find excerpts from both bills starting on page 72 of your materials. So first is AB 1546, which was introduced in January this year. Existing law requires a person convicted of a DUI within 10 years of 3 or more certain prior DUI violations to install an IID for a mandatory term of 36 months. This bill would require a person with 4 or more certain prior DUI violations to install an IID for a mandated term of 48 months. And the second bill is AB 1830, which was introduced in February. Currently, a court has discretion to order the installation of an IID upon a first conviction of driving while under the influence. AB 1830 would remove the court's discretion and instead require the court to issue the order. By removing the court's discretion, the bill would implement a state-mandated local program. This bill would also make amendments to the costs associated with installing and maintaining an IID ordered by a court. It would also extend the provisions of the IID laws indefinitely. So the status as of yesterday for both bills is that currently they are with the Appropriations Committee. At this time, I am going to pause and invite any comments from the advisory council members in the room.
Yes, thank you. I was doing some reading. I'm wondering if you guys have considered adding these to these ignition interlock devices. But the National Transportation Safety Board has recommended alcohol detection systems for all school buses. And I don't know if that's something that's come on your radar or seen as something to potentially add to one of these bills.
So that we would add to the bills that are currently, well, we don't sponsor the, I mean, maybe I can pass this over to.
So because we're, this is where the language in DCA matters, the difference between a board and a bureau. So because we're not a board, the board can independently propose legislation. A bureau cannot, because we are in essence, the hierarchy is, the chief is a governor's appointee rather than hired by the board. So we can't, on behalf of the governor, propose legislation. So we wouldn't be the body to do that.
Is it something that you've heard that someone's looking to amend this bill?
I haven't heard anything about it, but I don't know. Yeah, I haven't heard about that.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the advisory council members online?
Yeah, this is Toby Taylor. I would just add to that, appreciate the comments around NTSB. There have not been very many states, if any at all, that have acted on that recommendation, which we think is very important. Hopefully that will change in the near future, but we'd appreciate any support on this legislation that we can get.
Thank you. Any comments from the public in the room? Any comments from the public online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on to the final topic on the agenda. So I will be providing an overview of the sunset review process, which is a process mandated by the government code. Pursuant to the government code, boards and bureaus within the Department of Consumer Affairs are subject to what is called a sunset date. This is a date when a board or bureau is repealed and must cease operating unless the legislature extends this date, which is determined through the sunset review process. Each year, the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee hold joint sunset review oversight hearings to review the boards and bureaus under DCA. This comprehensive process allows the legislature to review the laws and regulations governing each board and bureau, assess their programs and policies, and determine whether they are effectively fulfilling their regulatory responsibilities and statutory mandates. It also includes a review of fiscal management practices. Boards and bureaus are also evaluated on key performance measures such as timeliness of actions and enforcement activities to ensure they are meeting the needs of California consumers while promoting regulatory efficiency and effectiveness. The sunset review process occurs every 4 years for the Bureau, and the Bureau is once again subject to this review, which will begin this year. You can find a timeline. It's a general timeline of the sunset review process on page 90 of your materials. The timeline provides milestone dates in the process and include the following. By December 1st of this year, the Bureau must submit a sunset review report to the legislature. In February 2027, sunset extension bills will be introduced. In February and March of 2027, sunset review hearings will be held. Approximately 10 to 14 days before the Bureau's hearing, the Joint Oversight Committee will provide a background paper to the Bureau that will identify issues the Bureau must address in a formal written response and potentially during the hearing. From May to August 2027, sunset extension bills will be amended to include provisions discussed during the hearing. In September 2027, sunset extension bills will be passed and signed. January 1, 2028 is the Bureau's current sunset date, barring any issues. The hope is that this sunset extension bill would extend this date to an additional 4 years. Also included in your material, starting on page 91, is the 2023 background paper that was issued by the Joint Oversight Committee as part of the Bureau's prior sunset review process. The Bureau will be expected to provide an update on the issues identified in the 2023 background paper during the upcoming sunset review. Regarding the sunset review report that is due to the legislature on December 1st and is the first action item for the Bureau, preparatory work on the report is underway. The report must adhere to a template that's provided by the legislature, which requires the Bureau to provide various critical information and data to assist the legislature in their evaluation of the Bureau. The report must be reviewed by DCA, the Business and Consumer Services Agency, and the Governor's Office before it is submitted to the legislature in December. After the report is submitted to the legislature, the Bureau may then publicly release the report. So that concludes my presentation, and I would like to invite any comments from Advisory Council members.
Thank you very much. I think there's an important issue that we need to ensure is addressed in the sunset review, and it goes back to the first days of household movers engaging. And Ivana Lamar is in the room. Her and I had a lot of fun in 2017 and 2018 as we were moving from the CPUC to Bear Hifty, if anybody in the room even remembers what Bear Hifty was. But one of the stumbling blocks, and it was kind of dramatic for a brief period of time, was on the fee structure. And movers for many, many years have become, they understood and adapted to a quarterly fee structure. Now, I know this falls outside of the standard DCA programs where everybody else is an annual, but movers are paying a lot of money and it's based upon the work that they're doing, and it makes sense that those fees be assessed quarterly. When we finally came to an agreement that we were going to move, part of that was DCA tabling that and saying, 5 years, we're going to leave you alone. You could do your quarterly fees and then we'll reevaluate. And that period has come and gone. And I would just ask that that language be removed, that it not be addressed in the future, that movers have and continue to prefer en masse the quarterly fee schedule. And thankfully, the Bureau has adapted very well and has established a program in the Connect program that can deal with that without a whole lot of administrative issues, as was problematic in the very beginning. So I say, let's leave it alone and continue, take that language out, take the whole thing, so that it just, we're continuing as a unique entity with quarterly fees.
Okay, I appreciate that. We made a note and we'll definitely take that back. And as Eileen said, right, this has to go through DCA exec, DCA legal, ledge, agency, governor's office, et cetera, before so I can't, I would love to be able to promise that. I can't promise that, but that is definitely something that we can take note of.
Yeah, if it's something that's not addressed by the time of the sunset review, we will be there testifying in opposition to that.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? We'd like to invite any comments or questions from the Advisory Council members online. Okay.
Tom Keepers, just a comment. I'm looking forward to the process.
Okay.
So it's a critical process.
We're very excited.
Yeah.
What I just said. I don't understand, Eileen.
Maybe I should qualify that to looking forward to providing some input.
Fair enough. Thank you.
When that's available. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question too. Is that Steve in the room in the blue shirt?
That's me.
Steve, are you from the upper Midwest? Because when you say so, I feel like I'm back up in Wisconsin at the moment.
People say that. No, I'm born and raised in Southern California.
Gotcha. You got a good upper Midwest soul. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to invite any comments from the public in the room. Yes.
I should have introduced myself last time. Ivana Lamar, Senate Business Professions and Economic Development. The reason Jacob took a while during public comment, he could tell that I was thinking and that I wanted to say something. The Bureau is different from any other program in DCA in that you regulate products, regulate test products. I just wanted to say the template for Sunset is it's written to try to address issues for all programs within DCA. Because of that, we don't have any area where you could include lab data. So I was going to mention that you should try to fit lab data in there so you get credit for the work done by the lab. If there's not somewhere where you can fit that, we're currently talking about rewriting a couple of the questions in the template. We usually send those out, the updated templates, in June. So if you have any ideas, happy to take suggestions from you on how we can incorporate that for you guys to get credit for the work that you do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't know if the folks online heard that. But Ivana Lamar is in the room and she's on the committee staff for the Sunset. And so she was just mentioning that the current template is a generic template for all DCA boards and bureaus, which doesn't really allow a space for the work that the lab does because it's so unusual. So she had mentioned that we can work together maybe to try to find a way for how best to incorporate that information into the report as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and any comments from the public online?
Some moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click that raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we'll just move to agenda item 14, which is just to ask council members in the room or online if there are any future agenda items for the next council meeting that you'd like to see. No. I'll just remind everyone that the next council meeting is set for November 5th. And with that, I will thank everybody for their time and attention. And we will conclude the meeting. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.